Introduction to Ethics in Cybersecurity, MPCR 5000, written and presented by Professor Scott D. Applegate, Georgetown University. During this presentation, we will discuss the class policies and syllabus and discuss some goals and expectations beyond the textbook or course materials. As you begin each module, please ensure you complete the assigned reading prior to attempting the assignments. Also ensure you review the slides in depth. The slides often contain material not found in the textbook. This is a non-attribution environment. Please do not cite or quote me or any of your fellow classmates outside the class without their express permission. Do not post or submit classified information to the course website. I and many of the students in the course have security clearances. We are not authorized to view materials we have not been cleared for, regardless of whether that material has been leaked to websites such as WikiLeaks. Make sure you engage with your fellow classmates. The students that take this course often have decades of professional experience. They are as much an asset, if not more so, than I am in your exploration of this domain. Debate the idea, not the person. Keep discussions civil and professional. It's okay to attack ideas. It is not okay to attack your fellow classmates. Support your opinions with evidence. This course is graded at the graduate level. I value your opinions as you explore the materials presented in this course, but at the graduate level, you must demonstrate that they are educated opinions by supporting them through research and citation, with strong, credible evidence. I don't expect you to be an expert on the materials presented in this course, but I do expect you to discuss those subjects at an expert level through the use of research. Avoid membership in what I call the Mutual Admiration Society. In discussion forums, one student will reply to another student's post by saying something like, "Hey, great post. I really thought your discussion of X, Y, and Z were truly awesome." While this is a nice compliment to your fellow student, it does not advance the discussion and certainly does not represent graduate level work. Your post should demonstrate critical thinking and analysis and be supported by evidence. Advance the conversation by expanding on the topic, exploring a tangent, or disagreeing with the original post and presenting a contrarian point of view supported by evidence. At the end of the day, we are trying to broaden our knowledge about these subjects, not just glad hand each other. Make sure before continuing this course you take the time to review the syllabus on the course website. At the start of each semester, I get several questions from students that are fully answered in the syllabus. This immediately tells me they have not bothered to read the syllabus. Don't be that student. Review the grading rubrics and ensure you understand exactly what you are being graded on. For every assignment, there is a grading rubric. Do not assume the standards for this course are the same as the standards for any other course you've taken. Each professor can and does set their own standards. I am known as one of the more rigorous graders in the program, so keep that in mind as you review the grading criteria. Forewarned is forearmed. Turn in assignments on time and ensure they are complete. If you have an emergency, please try to let me know as soon as possible so we can work together to try to resolve the situation. Pre-planned work and personal trips are not emergencies. If you know you are going to be traveling, you need to discuss it with me well in advance so we can arrange for you either to complete your assignment early or schedule a makeup assignment. Ensure your assignments are complete. If a question has multiple parts and you only answer one part of it, your assignment is incomplete and your grade will reflect that. If the assignment calls for you to respond to your fellow classmates and you do not do so, your grade will reflect that as well. If you turn in your assignment late, the same applies. Especially with discussion assignments, turning in your assignments late does not just affect you, it affects your fellow students as well, and that's simply not fair to them. This is a professional environment. Such environments come with requirements and deadlines just as they do in your workplace. Treat these requirements the same as you would in your work. Extra credit. Each semester, students ask about extra credit, so here it is. This course is graded on a 1,000-point scale. There are 15 possible extra credit points in the course. 2 points for completing the student introduction discussion assignment. 2 points for completing the mid and end of course evaluations, 2 points each for submitting new quiz questions for future classes, and 1 point each for unique course corrections. If you get all 15 points, that's 1.5% added to your grade. If you don't do extra credit and find yourself on the borderline between grades at the end of the semester, don't bother to ask about extra credit. The first column in the grade book, Module 0, Course Introductions, is where I park extra credit points. You will note the assignment is technically worth 0 points. However, as you do extra credit tasks throughout the semester, you will accumulate up to 15 points in this column. I want to spend a few minutes on something that has recently caused a lot of controversy in this program, the use of generative AI tools. These tools are genuinely useful, and I'm not asking you to pretend they don't exist. The left column shows you where they can legitimately help you. Areas like brainstorming a topic, outlining the structure of an argument, surfacing relevant research, or getting a second pass on whether your reasoning holds together. All of that is fair game. What is not permitted, and this is a hard line, is using AI to do the actual writing. That means your thesis, your arguments, your analysis, your discussion posts, those must be yours. If AI wrote it, it doesn't matter how much you edited it afterward. That is plagiarism under the course policy, and it will go to the Honor Council. Last semester I had to submit 2 students for investigation. Do not make me add you to that list. One more thing. If you do use AI for any permitted purpose, you must cite it. You must treat it the way you treat any other external source, with an in-text reference and a full entry in your reference list. Anytime you make use of material that you did not originate, whether it is from another author or from AI, you must cite and reference it appropriately. You might be wondering why we're drawing this line, so let me give you 4 reasons that go beyond because I said so. First, skills you can't buy. The writing and argumentation you do in this course is not just the product, it is the practice. Every time you work through a difficult ethical problem on paper, you are building the critical thinking that will serve you in your career. If AI does that work, you leave this course having paid tuition and learned nothing new. Second, AI misinforms convincingly. This is particularly dangerous in a graduate level course. Generative AI will produce text that sounds authoritative, cites sources that may or may not exist, and states incorrect facts with total confidence. Unless you already know the material well enough to catch the errors, which by definition you may not yet, you cannot trust it to be accurate. You'd be substituting work you can't stand behind and can't defend since you did not do the research, analysis, and critical thinking. Third, and maybe most importantly, your professional value. Cybersecurity and ethics are fields where human judgment is the whole point. If an employer can get the same output from an AI agent, what exactly are they hiring you for? Your graduate degree needs to represent something a subscription can't replicate, and that's your own developed skills, judgment, and expertise. Fourth, substituting AI-generated text as your own is plagiarism and can result in a failure in this course and dismissal from this program. I am very good at distinguishing between student-generated work and AI-generated work. I catch multiple students every semester. Finally, if students continue using AI as I've seen them, then within a few years, academic classes will just be AI teaching and grading AI, and the students will get nothing out of the program but an expensive piece of paper. You are in this program to develop the skills you need to excel in professional environments. You are here to learn and practice those skills, not have AI do it all for you. In this course, I expect you to demonstrate critical thinking, research, analysis, and graduate level writing and presentation skills. You are not here to memorize and regurgitate facts. You're here to learn, analyze, evaluate, reason, and draw conclusions based on available evidence. Most of the assignments in this course will reflect that philosophy. You don't need a master's degree to regurgitate facts. You need a master's degree to conduct research, make educated decisions, manage complex problems, and lead others in doing the same. As a hiring manager, I have interviewed hundreds of applicants and hired dozens of employees, most of whom had master's degrees. When I hire an employee of this caliber, my expectations are that they will be able to perform to that level that I will be pushing you towards in this course. As an action officer on the Joint Staff, I wrote information papers and recommendations for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Secretary of Defense, and other senior leaders. I also reviewed products from the White House and in doing so, used the skills detailed in this presentation on a daily basis. I strongly encourage you to incorporate these skills into your own personal toolkit as they are invaluable.
One of the key expectations I have for graduate students is what we call reading around the subject. Now, what does that actually mean? At the graduate level, we're moving beyond simply completing assigned readings and checking boxes. Reading around the subject means exploring your topic more broadly and deeply than just the core required materials. This involves three main elements. First, explore related areas. Cybersecurity ethics doesn't exist in a vacuum. If we're discussing data privacy, look at the legal frameworks that govern it, the technical mechanisms that enable or prevent it, and how different cultures view privacy differently. Understand both the technical and philosophical dimensions. Second, go beyond the basics. Yes, complete the required readings, but then push further. If we discuss a particular ethical dilemma like responsible disclosure, find real-world case studies beyond what's assigned. Read the actual vulnerability reports, the company responses, the security community debates. Follow the news. Cybersecurity ethics is happening in real time, not just in textbooks. And third, gain broader context. How do classical ethical frameworks like utilitarianism and deontology apply to modern problems like AI-powered surveillance or offensive cyber operations? How have our ethical standards evolved as technology has changed? What can we learn from adjacent fields like bioethics or research ethics? The goal isn't to overwhelm you, but to develop the habit of thinking critically and broadly. Because in your careers, you will face ethical challenges that don't come with ready-made answers or assigned readings. This skill of exploring beyond the immediate will be essential.
In the very last class of my formal academic career, my professor explained evidence-based reasoning and the characteristics of evidence. I wish someone had done this for me during my first graduate level course. The following slides are my attempt to pass this knowledge on to you. Evidence-based reasoning. All research in science, technology, and engineering is inferential in nature. In these areas, we draw probabilistic conclusions about the things that matter to us on the basis of evidence that we gather by experimentation or other means. What does this mean? This means the problems we are trying to tackle at this level are complex problems that do not have black and white answers. The answers may vary based on context and how the problem relates to you or your organization. Often what you are trying to do is find the best solution for your organization under a particular set of circumstances based on the best evidence available and your personal analysis. You do this by gathering data and conducting research or experimentation. There are three basic ingredients to evidence-based reasoning: hypothesis, evidence, and arguments linking evidence to the hypothesis. The hypothesis is simply the stance you have taken, the position you are defending, or the question you are trying to answer. Evidence is the data that supports or refutes your position. Once you have gathered data, you must do analysis and form arguments linking the evidence to your hypothesis. Research and source evaluation. Let's start by discussing evidence. There are four characteristics of evidence: accuracy, is the evidence correct? Relevance, does the evidence relate to the problem you are trying to solve? Credibility, does the evidence come from a strong, reliable, and trustworthy source? And inferential force, how strong or compelling is the evidence? These are the criteria you should use every time you select evidence to support your positions. Graduate level work can be thought of as being similar to a debate team. You need to do more than just state your position. You need to back up that position with facts, data, and compelling analysis. Empirical evidence versus anecdotal evidence. Empirical evidence is evidence backed up by observation, experimentation, or calculation. It is evidence that is backed up by hard numbers. Whenever possible, you should seek to create or find empirical evidence that supports your position. Anecdotal evidence is testimony that something is true, false, related, or unrelated based on isolated examples of someone's personal experience. It is distinctly different from scientific evidence or proof based on findings from systemic observation, measurement, and experimentation. Unfortunately, we end up relying on anecdotal evidence far too often in this field. It is important to remember that just because an incident occurred in a particular fashion in one well-publicized instance does not necessarily mean it is true for all incidents. Scholarly versus non-scholarly evidence. Many students in the program have a tendency to rely on the internet and internet search engines and popular media articles to support their positions. Unfortunately, that is simply not strong enough for our purposes. As I am sure you have all noted, the popular media often publishes inaccurate or incorrect information. Sometimes they will go back later and correct it, but that's not good enough for our purposes. The popular media is profit-driven and is often more concerned about scooping headlines and beating competition in the 24-hour news cycle than they are about accuracy. Additionally, many media sites are biased in their reporting, attempting to feed the preconceptions of their customer base. They also tend to do what's called circular reporting, whereby one source breaks the story and all other sources just report on that original source's story rather than doing any original research or verification. Because of this, we need to rely on scholarly sources, sources that are supported by empirical research or that have been peer-reviewed. Most academic journals go through a process called peer review, in which experts in the field review an article before it is allowed to be published. These reviews can be quite brutal, as the reviewers do not care if the article gets published. They only care if the article is accurate and has the evidence to support its assertions. There are times to use non-scholarly sources as long as you understand how to use evidence properly. In defending your position, you want to rely on scholarly sources of strong evidence. If you are laying out background information, establishing a timeline of events, etc., then oftentimes non-scholarly sources will do just fine in those instances. You can mix both scholarly and non-scholarly sources, you just need to do it properly. So what are the different types of evidence and what constitutes a scholarly source? Listed on this page is everything from websites to dissertations and theses. Generally speaking, the farther down on this list you go, the more scholarly and reliable the sources are. A good rule of thumb is that good sources show their work. Good sources will either contain their empirical evidence for you to review, or will cite and reference their sources so you, the reader, can find and review them to make your own judgments and conclusions. An example of source credibility. Let's say you're conducting research and read about a new exploit in an article. How do you evaluate the credibility of this source and ensure it is accurate and reliable? Several years ago, I was researching kinetic cyber attacks when I came across an article in Fire Engineering magazine that claimed you could start a fire simply by hacking into an HP printer. As you can imagine, I was very intrigued by this idea considering the topic of the article I was writing. I immediately jumped on Google and started looking for something to corroborate this story, and I found lots of other sources reporting on this terrifying exploit. SC Magazine, Tech News Daily, Scientific America, Ars Technica, Naked Security, and Fox News, just to name a few. I even found a lawyer who had started a class action lawsuit based entirely on this reporting. Surely it must be true with all these reputable news organizations reporting on it, except for the fact that it was not even remotely true or accurate. So how did I get right what all these other sources got wrong? How did I know it was not true? I went to the primary source. I found the original research and read it. The stories listed the lead researcher's name as Ang Sui, so I simply put Ang Sui's name in a search engine with an HP printer and it came right up. What Ang Sui's research actually showed was that it was absolutely no way you could start a fire by hacking an HP printer because there was a fuse installed in the printer that would pop if the printer went above a certain temperature, and once that fuse popped, the printer became a paperweight. There was no way to bypass the fuse as it was hardware, not software dependent. You could get the printer hot enough to toast a brown line on a piece of paper, but long before you reached the temperature of combustion, the fuse would pop and the printer would die. No fire. What is more incredible to me is not that I found the original research, it was that none of these news organizations bothered to. It took me a couple minutes after finding Mr. Sui's name in an article to find the original research. That is a sad testament to the state of our news services and one you should remember. Style and format. We will use APA format for style, references, and citation on all formal writing assignments. APA provides you a method for organizing your work in an acceptable and efficient manner for your reader, a safety net to ensure you are properly attributing and crediting your sources, and preparation for the rest of your classes you will take throughout your academic career. You can find an 80% solution for style and format on the Purdue Online Writing Lab, OWL, website. There are lots of examples and probably the exact one you need. Or you can invest in your own copy of the APA Style Manual. I strongly suggest that you purchase your own copy of the APA Style Manual and spend some time exploring it. It is an invaluable resource for anyone who is serious about writing. The mechanics of writing. First and foremost, know and write to your thesis statement. You should tell your reader up front what you're trying to prove. In a paper, this means there should be a sentence in the first paragraph or two that tells your reader what your paper is about and what you are trying to prove. In a paragraph, one of the first couple sentences should tell your reader what the focus of the paragraph is. Structure your paper and create an outline. An outline will keep you focused on the overall topic of the paper and the focus of each paragraph. Papers and paragraphs have similar structures. An introduction, which tells your reader what you are focusing on and why it is important. The body, which will contain your arguments, analysis, and evidence, and a conclusion or transition which summarizes your findings or gracefully transitions you to the next idea or paragraph. Each paragraph should focus on one main idea or theme, and each paragraph should directly support your overall thesis. Write multiple drafts. Do not turn in a first or second draft. It's always very obvious to me as a grader when I'm reading a first draft. Ensure your reader knows what you are writing about. Your thesis should be evident to your reader in the first couple paragraphs of your overall paper. As stated in the last slide, know and write to your thesis. Have someone else proofread your paper. Your mind will gloss over or ignore typos and mistakes because your mind knows what you intended to say and will often fill in the blanks when you try to proofread your own work. Someone else reading the same paper will see and point out your typos. Additionally, if the person does not understand something you have written, then most likely you have not explained it clearly enough. As Albert Einstein said, If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. Cite all external works, whether you quote or paraphrase them. Failing to cite external works leaves your reader unable to distinguish between your original intellectual capital and the intellectual property of your sources. More importantly, it's plagiarism. Use full references, not just URLs. What is a full reference? Generally, a full reference will include the author's last name and first and middle initials, the year the source or the article was published, the title of the source of the article, the publication source of the article, and the retrieval URL, or even better, the DOI of the article. A DOI is a digital object identifier. It is a permanent reference link to a formerly published article or publication. Why do we need full references? References serve a couple of purposes. First, they allow your reader to easily find your source materials and evaluate them for themselves. Second, they give proper attribution to the original author of the work you are citing. Third, they protect you from plagiarism. Fourth, they very rapidly allow a reader, or in my case, a grader, to evaluate your source. I can look at a properly written reference and know what type of source you are referencing about 98% of the time. Avoid ending a paragraph or idea with a quote. We all come from different backgrounds, have different experiences, and even different biases. The way you interpret a quote may not be the same as how your reader interprets it. So what you think is the end-all be-all quote that totally summarizes your argument may be interpreted quite differently by your reader. So take the time to follow that amazing quote with a little analysis and context to lead your reader where you want them to go intellectually. Don't introduce new evidence or ideas in your conclusion. Your conclusion should summarize the main points you have proven throughout your paper. It is the final summation of your argument. Use the Georgetown Writing Center if you need assistance on writing, structure, citation, or references. You've already paid for the privilege of using it, so you might as well get your money's worth. Use spell check. Understand that it is not perfect and sometimes may flag items that are not incorrect. But as a grader, when I grade a paper and find multiple spelling and grammar errors that are highlighted by the spell checker, it tells me that you did not do a good editorial review of your paper before submitting it. Class tips. The reflective blogs are not formal writing assignments. They are intended to be your personal reflections on the course materials. They do not require any structure, citation, or references. Just write down your thoughts and meet the minimum length requirements and you are good to go. The discussions and group assignments are formal writing assignments. These assignments should include well-structured writing supported by properly cited and referenced evidence. For the quizzes, be aware there are both multiple choice and multiple answer questions. Multiple choice questions will have a round radio button beside the answers and you can only select one answer. Multiple answer questions will have a square checkbox next to the answer and will always have at least 2 correct answers that you must select. If you only select one answer on a multiple answer question, you will automatically miss at least part of the question by default. The quizzes are open book, open notes, and all the questions come from course materials. Extra credit. We already talked about it, but remember it is there. If you see an error in the course, send me an email with the location of the error. Once I confirm it, I will give you credit for the find and correct the error. A final thought. A year after you finish this course, you will remember very little of the content unless you happen to be working in a specific related area. Hopefully what you will remember is the content of this presentation because you have put it to use in both your academic and professional careers. Be skeptical, follow the evidence, use your mind, engage in critical thinking, research, and analysis. Resist the urge to follow your own personal biases or preconceptions and instead verify what you hear and read. If you do that, then I will consider it a successful outcome to this course because I will know that you have the tools to go forth and find anything else we covered not just in this course, but in the rest of this academic program. Thank you for your time and best of luck during the coming semester. So welcome to the course. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concern. I am available via email or by phone or video conference by appointment.
If you have questions about this presentation or other aspects of the course, please feel free to email me or post a question to the Ask Your Instructor discussion forum in Canvas. I tend to respond to email much faster than forum posts, but if you believe your question may be of interest to other students, then the Ask Your Instructor forum may be the more appropriate venue for your question. This has been Introduction to Ethics in Cybersecurity, MPCR 5000, written and presented by Professor Scott D. Applegate, Georgetown University.